Back in the garage today, back in the garage today. What's going on, guys? Back in the garage today working on my 2021 KTM 890 Adventure R. If you've owned a KTM for more than a minute, you know that in order to work on anything engine related, the tank's got to come off. I'm going to be doing some modifications to it later today. So in today's video, I'm going to show you how to remove the fuel tank and also reinstall the fuel tank. So we're actually going to start out down here at the engine guard, skid plate, whatever you want to call it. In order to do this, hopefully you guys can see it, there is a vent tube down here on the right hand side of the bike on a little plastic connector. We just want to slide this vent tube off, and then we'll go to removing some fasteners. So with that vent hose popped off, we're going to take an 8mm ratchet, T-handle, whatever you want to use, and we are going to remove this fastener here on the tank guard. Now over here on the left-hand side of the bike, we are going to do the same exact thing. Get rid of this fastener. Now up here on the front of the bike, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 8mm bolts that need to come out. And then last but not least, down here underneath the bike, there's no way for me to get a camera down here, there are 2 more 8mm bolts down here on the bottom of this skid plate that need to be removed. And then we're just going to get it down here out of the way and move it. I know I've mentioned this in previous videos where I'm removing the tank. I always like to lay out some pasteboard, cardboard, something like that, so you have a good spot to lay out your parts, your body work without fear of it getting scratched up. Also, with this off the bike, probably a good time to clean it up if it is getting dirty before you put it back on later. All right, so with the skid plate off the bike, we need to remove our seat. Just go ahead and set that over out of the way. Now we need to get the rear cover off. We've got a couple of metal pieces and some rubber grommets here. Just be careful because you don't want to break these. Now don't just pull this off. There's a plastic tab back here. You can see slides over this piece. Need to get this off so we can get access to the spoiler. We're going to go ahead and pop the other one off the same way on the other side of the bike. Next up, we need to remove the battery box. For that, we'll use a Torx 30-bit. We've got this side here, and we also have one over on the other side. With those out, we should just be able to pop this up out of place. Just be careful. We do have these little plastic tips here that slide down over there, so make sure when you're lifting it up, you lift it straight up. We'll set this aside. All right, so next up, we're going to remove the right side tank spoiler. We've got a T30 fastener here. We've got one sitting up here. We've got another one here, and then we have 2 up here on the front. I'll show you as we go along. With all those fasteners removed, we have a bushing down here, rubber one. You just need to pop it out. And then you want to slide this forward because there is a connection piece right here. As you can see, that goes over that bolt there. We're going to set this aside. We're going to do the same thing on the left-hand side of the bike. All right, now we're up here on top of the bike, and we need to remove this cover right here. Just kind of pops up out of place, and that will give us access to these 2 vent lines. I believe this one on the one on the right, it might not pick up on camera, is your drain line. Just make sure when we go to hook these back up, they're in the right orientation. All we're going to do is simply pull these hoses off the little nipples that are on there and just get them out of the way. And this is what it looks like with them unhooked. You can see the 2 little nipples down here. Just pop them off and push them back out of the way for now. Next, we need to get our main fuel line unhooked here. And it's gonna be hard to see on camera, but there's a plastic connector on here. And this is where we're gonna have to be a little careful. I'll try to show you what it looks like here in a second once I get it off of there, but there's really no way to get a camera in. It's just a green connector we got to pull down, and that'll allow this 90-degree plug to pop out of there. I'll show you what this connector looks like once we get this off the bike. Just be aware there is going to be a little bit of fuel leakage. That's totally normal. Okay, so staying on the left-hand side of the bike, we've got the petcock down here on this side. All you're going to do is simply turn that so that it's closed. And then over here on the right-hand side of the bike, same sort of deal. Got the petcock on this side. We just want to twist that so it's fully closed as well. Okay, so over here on the right-hand side of the bike, this is our fuel level sending unit. We just need to unplug it and just kind of tuck it out of the way for right now. All right, so with our petcocks closed now, we can take this fuel line off that connects the bottom side, both petcocks. There's a little spring clamp up here. You need to slide it off of the nipple here and then just pull this off of here. This is what it looks like with the fuel line off of there. Now, if this is leaking, you probably need to tighten this down a little bit more. Mine's not, so now we can move back over to the left-hand side of the motorcycle. So it's going to be hard to see, but over here on the left-hand side of the bike, up under this piece here, there's an electric plug or electric connector we need to undo. That is to our fuel pump. I'll show you what it looks like here in a second, but I can't show it to you while I'm taking it off. Anyway, that's what it looks like, and it's up under this guard right here. It's just tough to get a camera in there. And then just like the petcock on the other side of the bike, we've got a spring clamp on the hose. We need to get that slid off and then pull that hose off of here. Okay, so with the fuel line disconnected, I don't know if you guys can see this zip tie here carefully because you don't want to clip the fuel line. We're gonna have to cut that because this hose here is zip tied to the main fuel line that runs up. So we just need to just disconnect it right there. We can put that zip tie, a new zip tie back on later, but it's this one right here, and then we'll go to removing the bolts for the tank. So we're gonna start out up here on top of the tank using a 6mm Allen. We've got one bolt here along with a rubber bushing and washer. And we've got another one over here. We'll get those out. Over here on the left-hand side of the bike, we've got another 6mm Allen. And there's one just like it in the same spot over on the right-hand side of the bike. There's a rubber bushing in there too, but if this is all that comes out, that's fine. Okay, now last but not least, we actually have to lift the fuel tank up off the bike. Now this right angle connector we undid earlier, we want to be extra careful with it that we don't get it caught on anything because we don't want to break it. Because we're probably not going to be able to show it when we put it back on. This is that green clip piece that goes from your main fuel line onto where your throttle body connection is. And this, when we put it back on, you'll push it on and then click this green piece back up into place. That's what'll lock it on. So this is what your fuel tank looks like off the bike, as well as everything else you need to take off in order to get it off. I'm gonna do the work I need to do, and then we're gonna come back here in a few seconds and I'm gonna show you how to put everything back together. All right, so when we go to put this back on, remember, just keep tabs on that fuel line. We don't want to mess up that connector. And then we have these rubber grommets that sit up underneath here. I don't know how well they're going to stay in place, so we're going to get ourselves close and then get them fitted in. There we go. Just get your bolt holes lined up there, and now we're going to start getting the bolts in. Okay, so with your rubber grommets underneath, you just got to get this lined up a little bit. Obviously, you got your collar and your rubber grommet here. Just gonna we're not gonna tighten any of this down. We just want to get the thread started. Same thing on both sides up top. All right, so over here on the right-hand side of the bike, we've got to make sure these grommets are in place, and they may fall out of place when you're going to get it on the bike. So we'll fish that one in. And then we've got one that goes there, or you can just put it here on the collared bolt, and then we just want to get it lined up, and then same sort of deal, just get it started into place. All right, we got it to bite. Now we're gonna move around and do the same thing on the other side of the bike before we start tightening these down. All right, once again, same thing on this side. Make sure your interior grommet and exterior grommet are in place. And then just get this lined up, started by hand, and then, like I said, we'll get all 4 bolts tightened down. I'll put the torque spec up on the screen, but to be honest with you guys, I'm just running them in so they're tight. So with the 4 6mm hexes all tightened down, next we're gonna find our drain hose that says drain on it. We're gonna put that on the right spigot, and then we're gonna take our other one and just press it on to the left spigot. Good. Now we're gonna take our little cover and just get it snapped back into place. Easier said than done. Just kind of gotta work it around. There we go. Once again, this is going to be hard to see, but we need to get this fuel line put back onto this spigot right here, and then once we do, we are going to clip that green clip up into place. Not really going to be able to show that. The only bit of advice I can give you on getting that on is once you get it pressed on, just take a big flat blade and use that to push the clip up into place. Down here on the bottom of the bike, we need to get this fuel line back on to the left-hand side petcock. Once we do that, we'll get this little spring clamp back on. We also need to plug in our fuel pump sending unit. Put a little dielectric grease on here before you put it back on. That'll just help keep it sealed a little bit better. All right, so same deal here on the right-hand side of the bike. We're gonna get our fuel line back on, get our spring clamp back on, and then we have our fuel level sending unit. Put a little dielectric grease on it and get it pop back into place. All right, so with your fuel line back on and the clamp on, now we can open up the petcocks. Make sure you do this on both sides. All right, so next up we're going to put on our right side spoiler. Remember, we have this little piece here that's going to slide over this shoulder, and then we also have this little metal piece down here that's going to pop into a rubber grommet. I would recommend putting some grease on that rubber grommet. It'll make this easier to pop in and out in the future. You also might want to wipe down your plastic too. Now we're going to move over to this side of the bike and do the same exact thing. Alright, so with the spoilers on, next up we're going to put our battery cover on. Remember, we have these 2 little pieces that are going to slide down over here. Looks like it's hooked in place. Now we just want to get our little collars with our screws. Again, Torx 30-bit, and get the one over on the other side as well. Now we're going to do our side covers. We've got this cutout piece here that is going to slide over this shoulder here, and then we have the 2 metal pieces that are going to go into the rubber grommets. I've pre-greased the rubber grommets to make it a little bit easier to both get them on and then get them off again in the future. Easy enough. Do the same exact thing on this side. Get this back piece over top of that shoulder. And then get these into the rubber grommets. Done. Alright, so before we go back down to getting the skid plate on, just go ahead and get the seat in place. Now let's get the skid plate on and we'll be done. Alright, so grabbing our skid plate, it's going to be hard to show, but basically what I'm going to do is these 2 little screws, we're going to get them back in place first just to help hold this, and I'll show you what's next. Alright, so we got our skid plate. We're going to go ahead and try to get these couple of screws in up front first so I can see them a little better. Just see if we can get them started a little bit. There we go. Don't want anything too tight because we still need some wiggle room. I'm going to go around and put the 2 over on that side. Alright, so with the 4 front screws started, now we're going to get this first side one in here on the tank guard. I'm just going to go ahead and tighten it down, and I'm going to put the 1 in on the other side as well. The last 2 bolts we have to put in go underneath here. There's no real way to get a camera down there, so just get them lined up and get them spun back in. Alright, so with the bottom screws, everything tightened up on here. Last thing we need to do, now I got a little bit different drain hose since I did the emissions delete, but either way, you have a drain hose down here that needs to go over this little piece down here. If I can get it, there we go. That'll allow it to drain outside of the skid plate should we have any overflow instead of directly on the exhaust. All right guys, so that is how you remove and then reinstall the fuel tank on one of these KTM 890s and 790s. I'd imagine it's very similar on the 901. We'll probably have a video on that once Pete's bike's over here on the lift. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, please give it a big thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, considering that subscribe button, because if you like motorcycles, this is the place to be. If you have any questions about the process, let me know down in the comment section below. I'll do my best to answer them. And as always, I'll talk to you again soon.